Welcome to Betrayal Narrative X.
10 years of marriage, and here he is sitting alone in a restaurant, looking at a steak that has long since gone cold. Today is their anniversary, but his wife hasn't even remembered it. She is now somewhere in a noisy club, laughing, flirting, enjoying the attention of other men, while he stares into the void and realizes he is no one for her anymore. When and how did it start? Let's get acquainted. Write in the comments, what city and country are you from? 10 years ago, he couldn't have imagined that their relationship would be in this state. Once she was his happiness, his future, his home. Now she's just a woman sitting in a bar with her girlfriends while he stares alone at a cold dish in a restaurant. Adam sat at the table, resting his elbows on the wooden surface, staring dumbly at his steak. It was getting cold, and so was his marriage. There was the hum of voices, the clinking of glasses, the quiet background music, but he heard only one thing, the silence within himself. A silence in which there was no more love, no more expectations, not even anger. Anniversary. 10 years since he and Judith had said their vows to each other. He'd made a reservation at the very restaurant where he'd once asked her to marry him. He wanted to surprise her, to remind her, to revive something between them. She only brushed it off with, "Oh, honey, it's Friday night. The girls have already booked a table at the club, I promised." He stared at her messages coming in one after another. "I'm sorry, I completely forgot you had dinner plans. We'll talk about it tomorrow, okay? You know how much I hate being a boring homebody. Don't be mad, I love you." Adam reread them over and over again. Loves. That word no longer had any meaning. A loving man wouldn't leave his husband alone on their anniversary. He remembered her differently. 9 years ago. Radiant, sincere, eyes on fire. She didn't need parties, crowds of friends. Social media and Instagram likes to feel important. They could spend hours just talking, walking, discussing plans, dreaming about the future. When did things change? First came the girlfriends who always had something important to do. Then the parties. Then the late returns. Weird text messages that she quickly minimized when he approached. The eternal "I'm tired" when he tried to talk. A year ago, he'd already caught himself thinking, what if she's not just hanging out? But he drove her away. Back then, he still wanted to believe. Now he didn't. He finished his steak, finished his wine. He left a generous tip for the waiter, who looked sympathetically at his lonely table. Adam drove home, staring silently into the night road, lit by the streetlights. His thoughts changed, but they all revolved around one thing. He couldn't live like this anymore. There was nothing left in this marriage worth saving. Judith had changed, and there was no point in pretending it was a temporary infatuation or a crisis they could work through. Everything had become finally clear this evening when she hadn't even considered putting her parties on hold for their anniversary. When he parked outside the house, it was dark inside. Judith hadn't come back yet. He opened the door, turned on the light, and walked into the living room. Her makeup bag was on the coffee table. Her empty wine glass was next to it, and her cardigan was tossed carelessly on the couch. She'd gotten ready in a hurry, not even bothering to tidy up the house. He sank slowly into the chair and glanced at the phone he'd placed on the armrest. The latest notifications included only her short message. "I'll be late. Don't wait up. Sleep without me. Don't wait up." He wondered how often he had heard those words from her lately. She was always lingering somewhere, with her friends, at business meetings, at the sorority, at spontaneous parties. When did this become the norm? Why had he turned a blind eye to it for so long? He got up, walked to the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and pulled out a bottle of water. He took a few sips, leaned against the countertop, then set the bottle back down abruptly. Suddenly he realized he didn't feel like waiting any longer. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. What's the point? He walked slowly back into the living room, kicked off his shoes, and sat back in his chair. His gaze fell on her laptop, which lay on the coffee table. Judith never left it unattended. She even took it with her into the bedroom, and sometimes into the bathroom. Something inside Adam twitched. Could this be his last chance to learn the truth? He leaned forward and opened the lid. The screen lit up. The system demanded a password. Adam hesitated for a moment. Judith always used the same combination for everything. Her little sister's birthday. He entered the numbers, and the screen changed to a desktop. A few folders, application icons, an open browser. Everything looked ordinary, but as I caught the messenger icon at the bottom of the screen, next to it was a red icon with the number 15, unread messages. He slowly hovered the cursor and clicked. The screen loaded, revealing the last dialogue. The name of the interlocutor was unfamiliar to him. Peter J. The messages were short, but very clear. Peter J. Still at the club? Hope the evening is going fun. Judith, of course. Waiting for you as agreed. Peter J. A. Your husband didn't suspect anything? Judith. He doesn't care at all. Peter J. So, no change then. Tonight at your place or mine? Judith. Better at your place. I don't want to have to explain where I've been in the morning, face blowing a kiss. Adam closed his eyes. He felt and guessed, and there it was, right here, right now. He had proof. Judith was no longer his wife. At least not in his soul, not in his heart, not in his actions. Her words, her promises, her smiles, all of it had belonged to someone else long ago. He closed the laptop, got up, and headed for the bedroom. He stopped at the mirror and looked at himself. The tired look, the shadows under his eyes, the gaunt face. When had he become like this? When had he lost himself to a woman who hadn't even seen fit to hide her betrayal? Adam exhaled. Tomorrow he would tell her he was leaving. Adam woke up earlier than usual, but he didn't feel rested. He didn't remember how he'd fallen asleep, but he knew exactly what thoughts he'd fallen asleep with. Tonight he would set the record straight. No more making excuses. No more trying to figure things out. No more pretending he wasn't hurt. He got up, walked to the bathroom, and turned on the cold water. He stared at his reflection in the mirror for several long seconds. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. His shoulders were tense, and his face was frozen with an expression of inner desolation. He wanted to feel angry, but even that feeling seemed to have evaporated. He washed his face, threw on a t-shirt, went into the kitchen, and turned on the coffee machine. Dozens of options for talking to Judith ran through his head, but none of them seemed right. What would he say to her? How would he start? I know about him and your sit-ins. It's too easy. I'm leaving. Too harsh. How long have you been deceiving me? What's the point of this? She's already given all the answers. As the coffee dripped into the mug, he heard the sound of the door opening. Judith was back. She tiptoed in, trying not to make any noise. Probably thought he was still asleep. She was wearing the same short black skirt she'd worn yesterday, and a crumpled blouse that she'd obviously just pulled on without caring how she looked. Her hair was disheveled, her lips smeared with lipstick. She didn't even try to hide where she came from. Judith froze when she saw him in the kitchen. Her eyes flashed with something akin to panic, but she pulled herself together. Oh, you're awake already. Yeah. She opened the door, pulled out a bottle of water, took a few quick sips. She avoided looking in his direction, as if she hoped he wouldn't ask too many questions if she just continued to act as usual. Where have you been? It was just a sleepover at Kim's, she answered casually, shrugging her shoulders. Kim's? Oh yeah. Okay. Adam set the mug on the table. Then why is Peter J. texting me? Judith's eyes widened. It only lasted a moment, but he noticed. She quickly tried to pull herself together, but her fingers still gripped the bottle a little tighter. Peter J.? She interjected a little too sharply. Yeah, he nodded. Peter J., the one you were waiting to see last night. She was silent. Her whole image, swaggering, confident, insolent, disappeared in a few seconds. Were you going through my phone? She asked sharply, frowning. In your laptop, Adam said calmly. She pressed her lips together, her chest heaving with deep breathing. For a few seconds, Judith frantically went through her thoughts, obviously trying to think of an excuse. It's just flirting, she said finally, shrugging. You know I like attention, but it doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything? He repeated with bitter sarcasm. So you just spent the night at his place for no reason? She turned away, took a few steps around the kitchen. Jesus, Adam, you've got it all wrong. It's just fun, easy, don't you understand? I didn't cheat on you in the way that you think I did. It's just the end, Judith. He interrupted her. What? The end? He repeated. I can't take it anymore. Are you serious? Absolutely, I'm tired. Tired of making excuses, of waiting, of hoping. All this time I've been trying to get you back, trying to figure out what went wrong. But now I know. I'm not the problem. You just chose a different life, and I'm not in it anymore. Adam, don't. He held up his hand, stopping her. I've already made up my mind. I'm filing for divorce. No, you can't. You love me. I did, but I don't anymore. This time she really did stop talking. It was the first time he'd seen her like this in a long time. She no longer looked confident, no longer playing the role of an independent woman who didn't care. She stood in front of him, lost, as if she'd only now realized that this conversation wasn't just another fight, but the real finale. Adam looked at her and went into the bedroom to pack his things. Adam silently put his things in a suitcase, trying not to think about what was happening. He felt a heaviness rising inside, but he didn't let himself give in to his emotions. This wasn't an impulse, not an impulsive decision. He was really going to leave. Judith stood in the doorway with her arms wrapped around herself and watched him. Her face no longer expressed defiance as it had before. She looked confused, as if she had just realized that this was not a game, not another family quarrel after which everything would go back to normal. "Are you really leaving?" Her voice sounded hoarse, strangled. Adam zipped up his suitcase, set it on the floor, and turned to her. "Yeah, but we can fix this," she blurted out, taking a step toward him. "No, Judith. You can fix what's not broken. And we've had nothing left for a long time." "Jesus, Adam, are you really going to ruin everything over nothing? You're really calling bullshit? I mean, it's just flirting. It's just, I wanted to feel more fun and have a good time." She fluttered her arms. "Yes, I went out. Yes, I met other people. But I wasn't going to leave you." Adam frowned. "Did you want to feel more fun?" "Yes," she blurted out, noticing the doubt in his voice. "Is that a crime?" "I just didn't want to be tied down to a routine. He looked at her for a long time before he spoke. "And I wanted to feel needed, but it didn't seem to matter." Judith bit her lip, not knowing what to say in response. "I don't want to be a part of this game anymore," he said firmly. "I'm leaving, and you can't stop me." She took another step, held out her hands to him, but he'd backed away. "Adam, please. Let's at least try to fix this," she said, something resembling sincerity in her voice for the first time in a long time. "Fix what?" he asked. "Will you change? Stop disappearing at night? Stop lying?" She looked away. "I don't know. I don't know why I want to do this." "Where will you go?" she asked in desperation. "Anywhere, as long as it's away from here." She pressed her lips together, gripping the fabric of his shirt tighter. What if I tried to change? What if I hadn't found out the truth? Would you have changed?" She fell silent. "That's the answer," he said, releasing his hand. He left the bedroom, headed for the front door. He could hear her intermittent breathing behind him, but he didn't stop. "You'll be sorry," she shouted back. Adam didn't even turn around. Adam stepped over the threshold, feeling the night air envelop his face. There was a strange feeling of lightness inside, mixed with an emptiness he couldn't quite grasp yet. He walked toward the car, hearing the muffled sounds from the house behind him, but he didn't stop. Judith could say anything she wanted, could scream, beg, or accuse, but it didn't make any difference. He opened the car door, threw the suitcase on the passenger seat, and got behind the wheel. He stood for a moment with his hands on the steering wheel and closed his eyes. Judith's voice still echoed in his head. "You're going to regret this." Does he regret it? No. But why is it so empty inside? He turned on the ignition, pulled onto the road, and headed toward the hotel where he planned to spend the night. As he drove through the deserted night streets, his thoughts swirled chaotically, interfering with each other. He tried to figure out why he felt not relieved, but rather lost. Their marriage may have been falling apart for a long time, but he had spent 10 years with Judith. They'd made plans, dreamed, endured hardships. Somewhere out there, in the past, there was another Judith, the one he'd fallen in love with, the one who loved him sincerely, without pretense, without craving outside attention. When did she disappear? Adam remembered all the times he'd felt like he was losing her, but had convinced himself that everything could still be fixed. The foolish naivete he now hated in himself. The phone vibrated on the passenger seat. He glanced at the screen. Judith. He didn't answer. A minute later came the message. I didn't mean for it to end this way." She didn't want to. What did she want? Did she want to go out all night long, flirt with other men, but have him stay home and wait for her like a faithful dog? Did she want to feel desirable to anyone but her own husband? The phone vibrated again. New message. "Can't we just talk? No fighting, no accusations." He drove to the hotel, parked, grabbed his suitcase, and headed inside. Check-in took only a couple minutes, and soon he was already entering the small room. Minimalist interior, a bed, a nightstand, a TV on the wall, and a window overlooking the city. It was unusual. For the last 10 years, he had always come to the house where Judith was waiting for him. Now he was alone, in a foreign place, without the usual routine, responsibilities, expectations. He sat down on the bed, pulled out his phone, and after hesitating for a moment, opened the messages. Judith wrote 2 more times. I miss. Are you really going to forget everything so easily? Adam exhaled tiredly. Easy? She hadn't realized how hard it was. Adam woke up early, when the sun was still shining through the thick curtains of the hotel room. He lay staring at the ceiling for a few seconds, realizing that this was his first day in a new life. No obligations to the woman who'd betrayed him. No attempts to mend what was broken. No meaningless expectation that everything would somehow change. He stood up, walked to the mirror, and looked at himself. His face was tired, his eyes dark, his shoulders tense. He had neglected himself in recent years, and not just externally. He lived in a state of constant stress, immersed in work, trying to please his wife, turning a blind eye to the obvious. He had dissolved into trying to save a marriage that had long been meaningless. That's enough. He opened his suitcase, took out his sports uniform, and put on his sneakers. If he wanted to change his life, he would start with himself. 15 minutes later, he was already running through the deserted streets of the city. The morning chill was invigorating, his lungs filled with air, and his heart beat at a rapid rhythm. He hadn't felt so alive in a long time. His thoughts gradually cleared up. While he was married, he slowly lost himself. He gave up playing sports because he was always preoccupied with family problems. He stopped going out with his friends because Judith was always demanding his attention, and then he just stopped trying to please her because he didn't know what would make her happy. He's free now. When he got back to the hotel, he immediately took a cold shower, washing away not only the sweat, but also the remnants of his past life. He stepped out of the bathroom, sat on the bed, and opened his phone. A few missed messages from Judith. You just don't say anything. Is that how it's going to end? I don't understand how you can walk away so easily. I miss you, Adam. Let's at least get together, talk. He stared at the screen and the messages, then just blocked her number. How many times had he given her a chance? How many times had he forgiven her indifference, her coldness, her lies? She never appreciated him until she lost him. Now it's her problem, not his. Adam opened his contacts and found the number of an old friend he hadn't spoken to in a while. Mike, hey, it's Adam. Adam. Man, it's been a long time. How you doing? I'm getting a divorce, he answered bluntly. Really? Geez, well, I guess it's probably for the best. Absolutely. Adam grinned. Listen, I want to get back into the sport, back to the gym, and just catch up on some of the things I've been missing. Why don't we get together, have a chat? Of course. I was just about to go to practice tonight. Come in for a couple of pints afterwards. Great, Adam said, feeling something inside fall into place for the first time in a long time. Adam sat in the cafe, looking out at the street through the large panoramic window. In the last 3 months, he had never once regretted his decision to leave, but tonight was special. He'd agreed to meet with Judith, not because he hoped to make things right, but to set the record straight once and for all. He ordered himself a black coffee, although earlier at this time he preferred something stronger. Alcohol was unnecessary this time. He wanted to be fully focused. Judith was 15 minutes late, but he wasn't surprised. She always did that. She liked to create a spectacular appearance, as if her presence was a privilege. When she entered, her gaze immediately found his. She hadn't changed the same well-groomed, elegant woman who was used to being the center of attention. She walked over to the table, slowly sat down across from him, and tilted her head to the side, scrutinizing him. You look good, she said with a slight smile, fixing her hair. Thank you, Adam replied calmly, taking a sip of his coffee. I thought you'd disagree, she finally said, leaning forward. I had my doubts for a long time, he admitted, but I decided that it would be better to meet and close the matter definitively. Close? She shook her head, shaking her head. Adam, but I want to make this right. You want to fix what exactly? That's it, she whispered. I realize I've made mistakes. I've been selfish, inattentive, chasing some empty things. But now that you're gone, I realize that you were the most important person in my life. He slowly set the cup on the saucer, watching her face carefully. Judith, did you realize this because you miss me or because your new life wasn't so great? I miss us, she said quietly. On us. Adam grinned slightly. You missed the stability, the sense of security I gave you. And when I was around, you didn't appreciate it. Adam, I've changed. Really? He leaned forward, crossing his arms on the table. What if I hadn't found out about your lies? Would you have changed? She inhaled sharply, but answered nothing. I don't think so, he continued, shaking his head slowly. You'd go on living your life as you pleased while I stayed in the role of the patient and waiting. It isn't. She objected, but her voice trembled. How? Judith, we're not the same people we were 10 years ago. And you chose this path. I just want a chance. She whispered. Adam leaned back in his chair, watching her. He felt that her words didn't move him. Neither pain, nor regret, nor memories evoked anything inside but weariness. Judith, he finally said, I don't have a chance for you. She raised her head sharply, her eyes filling with tears. Why? Because I don't love you anymore, he said calmly. Judith clamped a hand over her mouth, her shoulders shaking, but he felt no pity or regret. I wish you well, he added, but our story is over. He got up, grabbed his coat, and headed for the exit, leaving her sitting at the table. Adam paced the evening-lit street, breathing deeply of the cool air. There was a sense of calm inside that he hadn't experienced in years. Meeting Judith had proved to be the last link that bound him to the past, and now that link was finally severed. He felt no regret, no pain, not even anger. Only lightness and the realization that his life was his own again. The phone vibrated in his pocket. When he pulled it out, Adam saw a message from Mike. So, did you meet her? How'd it go? He smiled and quickly typed a reply. It's over. I'm finally free. The answer came almost instantly. Glad to hear it. Let's celebrate then. Will you swing by the bar tonight? Adam hesitated for a moment. He didn't want to just sit and drink, even if in good company. He wanted something different, something new, something that was his own personal decision, not part of a familiar scenario. Thanks, but I'd rather just take a walk. I need to digest everything. Mike didn't insist, just sent a short, I understand. And that was the end of the conversation. Adam tucked his phone into his pocket and looked at the lights of the city. Suddenly his gaze locked on a small, cozy cafe on the corner of the street. Through the glass window, he could see people sitting inside, talking, laughing, enjoying the evening. He noticed a lone girl at a table by the window, dark hair, a slight smile, a cup of tea in her hands. She was reading a book, occasionally turning away from the pages to take a sip of her drink. Something about the sight caught his attention. He thought about it. Before, he would have just walked past without even paying much attention. But now he was free of everything that had held him back before. He could do whatever he wanted to do without looking at anyone. He got up, headed toward the cafe, and went inside. The warm smell of coffee and pastries enveloped him, creating a pleasant, homely atmosphere. He took a few steps, looked around, and then, as if on some inner impulse, came to the table where the girl was sitting. She lifted her head and looked at him in surprise, but her gaze didn't express irritation, more like mild curiosity. I'm sorry to interrupt, he said, feeling a smile appear on his face. I noticed you from the window and thought we might have an interesting conversation. She put the book aside, looked at him carefully, and, with slightly raised eyebrows, replied, That's a rather unusual conversation starter, but I think it's intriguing. Adam nodded, then gestured to a vacant chair. Mind if I join you? She made an inviting gesture, and he sat down across from her. What happened next was another story. Do you think Judith really realized her mistake, or was she just scared of being alone? Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. If you liked the story, please give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm show my content more often. If you are new to the channel, do not forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep making more stories for you.